Today, we're going to work on solving two-step linear equations. So if you're working in IXL, this is under Algebra 1, J.4, solve two-step linear equations, and the code is QAK. So in these examples, we're going to be using inverse operations. It's very similar to my last video where we were solving one-step equations, but this time we're not just going to choose one operation, we're going to have to use two operations in order to isolate our variable. What's really important to remember is order of operations. When you're solving, usually you use PEMDAS, which is parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, which would go left to right, and then addition and subtraction, which would also go left to right. Today, when you're isolating a variable, it's important to start backwards. So instead of starting with parentheses, we're actually going to start with addition and subtraction first, then multiplication and division, exponents, and then parentheses. So let's go ahead and get started. In the first problem, we have s divided by 4 minus 2 equals 1. We're going to start with addition and subtraction in order to get our s by itself. We're not doing anything with the 1 because it's on the opposite side of the equal sign. And I see a lot of my students like to draw kind of like that wall so that they remember the 1 isn't involved. We're not touching that. Instead, in order to get the s by itself, we're going to have to remove the 4 and the negative 2. Since we're starting with addition and subtraction, the 4 is attached by division, so we're not going to touch that one yet. The minus 2 is attached by subtraction, so that's where we're going to start, and we're going to add 2 to both sides. What happens is then we're left with s divided by 4 equals 3. So since we did addition and subtraction, now we're going to move on to multiplication and division. And since our problem states divided by 4, we're going to do the opposite and we're going to multiply by 4, making sure that you multiply by 4 on both sides. On the left side, multiply and divide by the same number will cancel out, leaving us with s. And on the right side, we've got 3 times 4, which is 12. So in the box, I'm going to go ahead and type the number 12. Let's look at the next one. We have n minus 9 divided by 2 equals 4. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because generally speaking, what we do is we start with addition and subtraction. But if I go in and try to add 9 to both sides, you'll notice I'm blocked by that divided by 2. So right away, it's only our second problem, but we kind of see an exception to this rule. I can't add 9 because the divided by 2 is blocking my way. So in order to begin, we actually have to get rid of the divided by 2 first, doing the opposite. So that hasn't changed, still doing the opposite, multiplying by 2 on both sides. My times 2 and divided by 2 cancel. So I have n minus 9. And on the right-hand side, I have equals 8. Now, because I got rid of that divided by 2, I can access that minus 9 using the opposite. I'm going to add 9 to both sides. On my left, it cancels, leaving me with just n. And on my right, I'm going to do 8 plus 9, which is 17. So in the box, we type 17. The next problem is exactly the same way. Again, we normally start with addition and subtraction. We can't this time because that divided by 4 is blocking our way. So we're going to multiply by 4 on both sides. B plus 10 equals 16. In order to get that b by itself, I'm going to do the opposite of plus 10, which is minus 10. And I'm left with b equals 6. So that would be my answer to type in the box. 6. The next problem is reversed. So far, we've seen the variable on the left side. Now it's on the right side, but we're still taking the same steps. Don't let that confuse you. We're still going to start by adding 4 to both sides. So we're going to have 2 plus 4 on the left, and we're going to have 2s minus 4 plus 4 on the right. We're getting rid of that minus 4 using our inverse operations. On the left-hand side, we get 6 equals, the 2s has stayed the same, but the minus 4 and plus 4 cancel out. The next step I'm going to do is instead of multiplying by 2 on both sides, I'm going to do the opposite, the inverse, and divide. My 2's cancel out, leaving just the s, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, which would be my answer. In the box, I'm going to type the number 3. Three t plus 1 equals 19. Start with your addition and subtraction, and we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. That will leave us with 3t on the left because our 1's cancel, and 19 minus 1 would be 18 on the right. The opposite of multiplying is divide, so divide both sides by 3, making sure whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. My 3's will cancel, leaving t, and 18 divided by 3 will be 6. So my answer is t equals 6. In this problem, I'm going to start with addition and subtraction. And since it says plus 2, I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. So minus 2 on the right, minus 2 on the left. Keeping in mind, I do it on one side of the equal sign and the other side. And if it helps, go back to that little hint of drawing the line through the equal sign. You're only subtracting once on either side. 4 minus 2 is 2. There's my equal sign. My 2's are going to cancel here, plus 2 and minus 2. It would be equals to 0, and I'm left with 2f on the right. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. On the right side, my 2's cancel, leaving me just with the letter f. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Anytime you divide and the top number is the same as the bottom, it equals 1. So the answer to this problem will be the number 1. In my next problem, again, we're starting with addition and subtraction. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. The s divided by 3 stays the same. Remember, it looks like a fraction, but it means division. My 12's cancel, and 14 minus 12 is 2. Now I'm going to do the opposite of dividing by 3. I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. My 3's cancel, leaving me with the letter s on the left-hand side, and 2 times 3, which is 6, on the right-hand side. There's my answer, 6. This was one of our exceptions to the rules. I know we normally start with addition and subtraction, but we can't add 3 because it's being blocked by that divided by 2. This is an exception to our rule, and we're going to start with multiplication so that we can get to that minus 3. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. So 2 times 2 and divided by 2 cancel out, and I'm left with g minus 3. On the right-hand side, 2 times 2 is 4, and my last step is to add 3 to both sides. The 3's cancel on the left, leaving me with g equals, and on the right, 4 plus 3 is 7. So 7 is my answer. Solving for r, again, my first thought is let me add 82 to both sides, but I can't do that because it's being blocked by that divided by 8. So instead, or divided by negative 8. Instead, I'm going to do the opposite. The only thing that's opposite is my sign. So instead of dividing, I'm going to multiply, but my negative 8 stays the same. So I'm multiplying both sides by negative 8. On the left, those negative 8's cancel, and I'm left with r minus 82. On the right-hand side, I have negative 2 times negative 8. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 times 8 is 16. I've got one last step, and that's to do the opposite of minus 82, which is plus 82. So I'm going to add 82 to both sides. My left side cancels. We're adding and subtracting the same number. So I just have r. On my right side, 6 plus 2 is equal to 8, and 1 plus 8 is equal to 9. So my answer is 98. So this is a new type of problem. We haven't seen this one before. It involves parentheses. And if you think about parentheses, where it goes in order of operations, we talked about PEMDAS. And this is in order to find an answer, we use PEMDAS. But when we're solving for a variable, we actually go the opposite way. So we start with our addition and subtraction, then we move on to multiplication, division, exponents, and parentheses. In this problem, I know your first thought is, but I see a +5, so I should subtract 5. But in this problem, we've actually got two different parts of our order of operations. We've got multiplication, 3 times my group in parentheses, and then I've got a group in parentheses. So if you look at order of operations and how we would normally start, we're going to start with our multiplication because that comes before parentheses. So I have this problem, -6 equals 3 times v plus 5. I'm choosing between multiplying first and doing the parentheses first. And because I'm going the opposite way, I'm starting with addition and subtraction, going all the way down to parentheses. I'm going to start with my multiplication and division first. This says 3 times my group in parentheses. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Multiply and divide by the same number cancels out, and I'm left with the v plus 5. You can keep it in parentheses or you can take it away because it's not needed right now. Then we're looking at, on the opposite side, -6 divided by 3, which is -2. Remember, our equal sign stays in the same spot. Now that we're done with our multiplication and division, now we move to the group that was in parentheses, which is your v plus 5. Now we move on to our subtraction. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. My +5 and -5 cancel, and I've got v equals -7 as my answer. Another way you can solve this, which one of your teachers might have shown you, is you can also distribute that 3 and then solve it that way. It's really completely up to you. It's two different ways of solving. In the next problem, we're going to start with our addition and subtraction. We're going to subtract 7 from both sides, leaving us, oh, that's a 7, leaving us with c divided by 2 equals 1. I'm going to multiply both sides because that's the opposite of dividing. So when I multiply both sides times 2, my 2's cancel on the left, and on the right, I'm left with the number 2. 1 times 2 is 2. I'm going to start with addition and subtraction. And since this says a -40, I'm actually going to add 40. So I'm going to add 40 to both sides. On the left-hand side, my 40s cancel, and I'm left with s divided by -2. And on the right-hand side, if I borrowed $49 from someone, but I paid them back 40, I only owe them $9 now. It says divided by -2, so I'm going to multiply both sides by -2. On the left, my 2's will cancel, leaving me with s. And on the right-hand side, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 9 times 2 is 18, which would be our answer. In this problem, you can see that we have multiplication again, and then we also have a group in parentheses. We're going to address the multiplication first. I know you're seeing that +16, but keep in mind it's in parentheses. And when we do the opposite of PEMDAS, parentheses goes at the end of our order, not at the beginning. So I'm going to start by dividing both sides by 4. Let me rewrite it over here so I have a little bit more space. Equals 4. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Multiplying and dividing by 4 cancels out, and I'm left with h plus 16. I took it out of the parentheses because there's nothing else there, so we don't need the parentheses anymore. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now I can move on to my addition and subtraction because that's all that's left. I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. My 16s cancel, and I've got h equals -15. For this one, again, you could have used distribution if you wanted to. And actually, the next time I see one of these problems, I'll show you how that would look if you use distributing instead. In this problem, we're going to start with addition and subtraction first. I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. 17 minus 13 is 4. And y divided by 4 would then say, oh, I'm sorry, my 13s would cancel. Whoops, let me erase that. My 13s cancel on the right, leaving me with just 4 equals y divided by 4. I'm going to multiply both sides by 4, leaving me with my 4's canceling and just y on the right, and 4 times 4 is 16. This one is a little bit tricky because you can see our variable came second. We have our number plus 2g equals 15. I'm still going to start with addition and subtraction. And since there's no sign in front of the 9, I can assume that that's positive. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. I'm solving for g, so I'm not going to be moving that letter g. That's going to stay put. Plus 9 and minus 9 cancel, so I have 2g on the left. On the right-hand side, I have 15 minus 9, which is 6. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2 because that's the inverse of multiplying. So g equals 3. In the box, I'm going to put g equals 3. Okay, here's another example of those parentheses. So before I showed you some examples where you would divide both sides by -4 and then subtract 5. Instead, this time I'm going to show you another way of doing it. And honestly, either way would work. It's just kind of what you prefer. I'm going to show you how you can distribute this. So we know when there's a number in front of parentheses, we distribute using multiplication. -4 times j would just be -4j. -4 times 5 is -20, and my equals -16 stays exactly the same. So by distributing, you can see this turns into a problem that we've seen many times in this example, in this lesson. We're going to add 20 to both sides because that's the opposite of subtraction, and I'm left with -4j equals 4. Then I'm going to divide both sides, not by 4, I'm going to divide by -4. It's whatever that number is, and that minus sign needs to go with the 4. So over here, also divide by -4. My left side, I'm left with just the letter j. And on the right side, a positive divided by a negative is always a negative, and 4 divided by 4 would be 1. So my answer is -1. So again, just another way of solving when you've got parentheses. Here we've got some decimals, but just because it has decimals doesn't mean our steps change at all. We're going to start with addition and subtraction. -2.36 minus 2.36. So we subtract it one time on the left, one time on the right. On the left side, it cancels, and I'm left with just f divided by 2. On the right side in my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and type what do we have? 3.66 minus 2.36, and I have 1.3. Instead of dividing by 2, I'm going to multiply by 2. So I'm left with f equals 1.3 times 2, which is 2.6. This one's a little bit tricky because look, our variable is negative, then we're adding 10, and then it equals 14.4. So I'm going to leave my letter C, but again, subtracting that positive 10. So start with addition and subtraction first. The negative C stays negative C, but my 10s cancel. And then 14.4 minus 10 would leave me with 4.4. But this is not my answer because it says negative C and we want positive C. So even though you don't see it, there's a 1 in front of that C. So it's like saying -1C. I'm going to divide both sides by -1. My negative ones will cancel on the left, leaving me with the letter C. And then 4.4 divided by -1, well, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And 4.4 divided by 1 will stay the same, 4.4. So my answer would be -4.4. I'm into my challenge zone now. So this was one of those trickier problems before. We're not able to start with addition and subtraction because that division bar is blocking our way. So we're going to multiply both sides by -3. They cancel on the left, leaving us with y plus 6. And on the right, a positive times a negative is a negative. 1 times 3 is 3. Then we can subtract 6 from both sides, leaving us with y equals -9. In this problem, we're going to do the same steps. Can't add 9.7 to both sides because we can't access it yet. That divided by 3 is blocking our way. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. I'm left with h minus 9.7 on the left. In my calculator, I'm going to type 3.42 times 3, and I get 10.26. I'm going to add 9.7 to both sides. That's inverse operations. They cancel on the left, leaving me with h. And on the right-hand side, if I have 10.26 plus 9.7, I get the answer 19. Oh, my pen, sorry. 19.96. If you're adding these together without a calculator, don't forget to put a 0 there as your placeholder. And it would be 6 plus 0 equals 6, not 6 plus 7. Okay, so there's my answer. Let me type that in. 19.96. Looks like we've got a couple more problems. In here, you can distribute if you want and distribute that negative 1.4 to the G and to the positive 4. I'm going to use multiplication and then address my parentheses. So negative 1.4 is being multiplied, which means I'm going to divide negative 1.4 on both sides. It cancels on the left, leaving me with G plus 4. On the right-hand side in my calculator, I know a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 4.2 divided by 1.4 is a 3. Now I can move on to my subtraction and subtract 4 from both sides, leaving me with G equals negative 1 as my answer. And here, I cannot add to both sides yet. Instead, I have to get rid of that fraction bar, that divided by 3. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. The left side cancels, leaving me with r minus 6.54. On the right-hand side in my calculator, I'm going to put 3.61 times 3, and I get 10.83. I'm going to add 6.54 to both sides since that's the opposite. The left side cancels, leaving me with r. On the right side, I've got 7. That's 13, carry the 1, and that becomes 17, and bring your decimal point down. You can also use your calculator, and it would be 17.34, or 37, sorry, 17.37. There we go. And it looks like this is our last problem. We're going to start by doing the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. Subtract 7.1 from both sides. We're left with 2 equals u divided by 2. When I multiply both sides by 2, I get u equals 4. So in the box, I'm going to type u equals 4. And we are done. We have mastered another skill. Until next time, have a great day.